Gustavo Cervantes.
State.
All right. Good morning, Gustavo.
Hi.
Where are you presently employed?
I'm on the trauma team at University Hospital.
And how long have you been there?
I've been there since May.
Okay. And what is your role?
I'm a staff nurse in the trauma team.
So, what kind of training do you need to become a staff nurse at a trauma center?
Usually good long experience in the emergency room in general.
Experience in the emergency room?
Yes.
So, do you have a degree or any kind of certification?
I'm a registered nurse.
Okay. And I know it sounds pretty fundamental, but what kind of schooling do you have to be a registered nurse?
I have an associate's. It's a 2-year degree.
From what institution?
Galen College of Nursing.
And when did you get that?
2015.
Okay. So, when you got your degree at Galen, did you start working right away?
Well, I was already working in the emergency room at Downtown Baptist since 2008. I was an LVN at the time, but I was in the ER from 2008 to 2015, and then just finished my degree and kept working in the emergency room.
So what's the difference between an RN and an LVN?
Amount of responsibility, the kind of medications you can give, the training, the schooling teaches you more about this disease process and how to manage patients.
Okay. And so you were an LVN before you were an RN, right?
Correct.
What training did you have to be an LVN?
It was a 14-month school. I got it through the Army.
Okay. And how long were you in the Army?
8.5 active and 6 in the reserves.
From what years?
1994 to 2002 active duty, 2002 to 2008 reserves.
And did you serve as an LVN in the Army?
In the reserves. In active duty, I was infantry.
Okay. So you're infantry, and then you got your LVN certification in the Army.
In the reserves.
And in the reserves.
Yeah.
And you served in that capacity.
Correct.
Okay. So then in, 2008, that's when you left the military?
Correct.
And you went to work for the ER in Downtown Baptist?
Correct.
How is working in an ER different than working in another part of the hospital?
The pace, you don't know what to expect. You're getting everybody fresh after injury or when the disease is going, so you have to figure everything out. Other parts of the floor, you know what's going on with the patient. You have a general idea. All the testing's done. With us, it's more finding out a process, and a lot of times just acute care. So you're getting them fresh. You might be trying to save their life. You might be just trying to find out what's wrong with them in general.
Okay. And is it safe to say that, you said the words, you never know what you're going to get. Is it safe to say that the individuals who are working in the ER have to have a more broad knowledge?
Jack of all trades.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you first worked in the ER in 2008 at Downtown Baptist, and then in 2015 you got your associates and became an RN,
Correct.
registered nurse. Where did you go in 2015?
2015, I stayed there at Downtown Baptist, and then I went and did liaison work for a rehab hospital for about a year, and then went back to the ER where I wanted to be.
Okay. And the liaison work, was that still with Downtown Baptist?
No, that was a different company. Warm Springs Rehab.
What was it?
Warm Springs Rehab.
Warm Springs Rehab. Okay. And how long were you doing that?
I did it for about a year, but it wasn't.
And then you went back to an ER?
Correct. Northeast Baptist.
Okay, you went to Northeast Baptist. And so that would have been what, 2016, 2017?
Around that, yes.
Okay. And you worked in the ER there?
Correct.
Were you just were you a staff nurse?
Staff nurse, yes.
Okay. And then how long did you stay at Northeast Baptist?
I stayed there for 2 years, and then I went to work as a post-op nurse for a small surgical hospital, Heidner Ambulatory Surgical Hospital,
Okay.
for about 2 years.
Okay. All right. And then, after the post-op nurse, where did you work?
That's when COVID came around.
Okay.
So I went to work as a contract nurse, going to the most needed hospitals in Houston and here, just doing COVID nursing.
Okay. And is that similar to an ER environment?
It was still in the ER.
Yeah.
It was still the ER.
Did you eventually stop being a contract nurse?
Once everything settled down and they started opening back up, I actually finished my COVID nursing. That's how I got to Southwest General.
Okay.
And they asked me to stay on as a charge nurse there once it was over.
Okay. So, do you remember what year you went to Southwest General?
That would have been in 2021, I believe.
2021?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think I'm not.
And at some point, did Southwest General change names or?
They did. They changed names to Texas Vista Medical Center.
Okay. Okay, now you said you became a charge nurse there.
Correct.
How is that different than a staff nurse?
You're responsible for the entire ER for your shift, as far as assignments, being an in-between with the nurses and doctors, making sure the nurses are doing their job, basically.
Okay. Head nurse?
Correct.
Okay. And were you in the ER at Southwest General?
Yes.
Okay, Texas Vista?
Yes.
So at this point, you know, we're up to, you started Southwest General in 2021. Do you remember when it turned to Texas Vista?
Sometime in 22. I don't remember exactly.
Okay. So you're there in 2022, and when did it shut down? Right.
Correct.
When did it shut down?
May of last year.
Okay. Were you there until it
I was there on the
closed?
very last day. Yes.
Okay. Now, that is, let's see if I can do my math. Reserves. So you've been working in an ER type of environment for about 20 years. Is that safe to say?
16.
16?
2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
16 years. Have you seen children come into the ER?
Many times, yes.
Many times?
Many times.
Can you estimate like more than 100?
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay. Have you seen people who came in who maybe had exercised too hard and hurt themselves?
Right.
Have you seen people that come in that had been beaten?
Yes. All
In February of 2022, actually, I'm going to pause for a second. Yeah. Okay. Runner, may I, Coach?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what I have marked for identification purposes as States Exhibit number 1. Can you please do an X where Southwest General Texas Vista was located?
Gotta go down here. I'm trying. Honestly, it's further down.
Sir, I need to speak up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just trying
I
to.
think he's thinking out loud.
Yeah, I'm trying to
All
find
right, so if
exactly.
y'all are thinking out loud, the court reporter puts that on the record.
Okay.
And if you're gonna think out loud, then you need to speak up so she can hear.
I apologize. Oh, yes. It was further towards the south.
Okay.
It was generally. It was sorry. I apologize. It was generally. Golly, this map isn't as detailed.
Okay, so the map doesn't show it.
No,
Okay, let me see if I can get a better map for you.
sorry.
So, February 7th of 2022, were you working as the charge nurse at Texas Vista Hospital on that day?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall a patient by the name of Mercedes Lozoya?
Yes.
You just testified that you have probably seen over 100 children that come in, and numerous people who have been beaten or overworked. So what is it about Mercedes Lozoya that you remember so well?
All of it, just the way she was presented to us, and just
Okay.
the condition.
Okay. You said how she was presented to you. First of all, do you recall how old Mercedes Lozoya was?
5 years old.
Who brought her to the hospital?
My initial understanding was mom ran in with her, yelling for help, and that's when my triage nurse grabbed her from mom and brought her down to the main ER where we were at.
And mom was screaming for help, you said?
That's what I was told by the triage nurse.
Could you hear her?
Once they came out of the triage area near the front entrance, I could hear them down the hallway.
Okay. And what did you hear?
Save my baby. Some other things that really, at that point, I just focused on the child.
Okay. And so who brought you Mercedes?
My triage nurse grabbed her from mom, I guess, at the front, and came running down the hallway, also yelling that she wasn't breathing.
Okay. And did you at any time take over the care?
I did.
Mercedes?
I did. I took her from the triage nurse and carried her into the room that was right behind us, put her on the bed, and that's when we started working.
Okay. So, Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been labeled State's Exhibit Number 2.
Okay.
What is that?
This is the chart for Mercedes. It's her medical record.
Okay. And who authored this?
That would be me.
Okay. So you authored this report?
Correct.
Okay. Now, what was the purpose of making these records?
To record the care of the patient, what was given, what was done, to maintain the record. Just
Okay.
record maintenance.
And is this something you do for all patients?
Every
who come in?
every patient has a medical record.
Okay.
Correct.
And is it important for medical history to make a
Right.
record of everything?
Right. Everything needs to be recorded for the patient's health, for future visits, and also for legal reasons, of course, to make sure that everything that we do for the patient is recorded and it's correct and it's...
Okay. So when we're looking at this, what kind of information did you record here?
You always have the time of arrival, her triage level, the condition they came in, include the initial assessment, which is their mental status, their consciousness, weight, medical history, allergies, all the things.
What is medical history?
Any previous medical conditions, surgeries that the patient may have had.
Okay, and obviously Mercedes came in injured and needing help. So who did you get that history from? Who would that history have come from?
In a normal situation, it would have been the parent.
Okay.
What is the Glasgow Coma Scale?
That's a scale we use to determine a patient's their consciousness. Basically, it grades the vision, the eye response, verbal response, and motor response of the patient. It goes from 3 to 15, 15 being completely alert and awake, normal, and 3 is completely unresponsive.
Okay. Is that part of the triage process?
Correct.
Okay. What was Mercedes?
She was a 3,
And again, that meant she was.
completely unresponsive.
She was completely unresponsive.
Correct.
Okay. What else is done in triage?
Triage is basically gathering the complaint, why they're there, and allergies, history, weight, and we take into account why they're there to determine what their acuity level is.
Okay. And so who was, were you doing the triage?
Yeah, so normally it's done at the front by the triage nurse, who assigns them a acuity level depending on how serious their condition is, and it tells us how fast we need to get them back or whether they can wait. In a situation like that, she was a level 1, meaning the life is at risk. They bring them straight back, and it's all done we're basically doing it all at the same time. The triage, well, not initially, no, we're not typing in everything in. We're working on the patient, and after the fact, we complete the appropriate charting.
Okay. So, as part of your care of Mercedes, did you have to sorry, I was she was unresponsive.
Correct.
So what treatment did you provide for Mercedes?
We took her into the room immediately. First thing is checking for ABCs, airway, breathing, circulation. Notice there was no chest rise. Assumed she wasn't breathing. Checked her pulses, and there were about 2 of us checking pulses. Usually, when there's a patient in that condition, there was no pulse. So we started chest compressions immediately, and then in the process of trying to get circulatory access, IV access.
So you checked her levels, right? And you didn't feel pulse.
Correct.
Did you do any kind of medical intervention?
Right. The CPR. We were trying to establish airway. She had mashed bananas in her mouth, which we had to take out. I digitally removed it so we could actually get access to her airway. Start giving her ventilations with a BVM.
Okay.
Try to establish IV access, which was nearly impossible. We ended up
I'm sorry, IV access you said was nearly impossible?
Yeah, there was the veins weren't giving us any return.
Okay. Can
So-
you explain that to the jury? What does it mean that the veins weren't giving a return?
So with the IV catheter, it has a chamber in it that gives, when you hit the vein, it gives you a blood return, so you know you're in the vein and you can advance. My nurses were putting it in, and there was no blood return. When there's lack of circulation, that can happen. There's nothing coming back because it's the pressure from the vein that pushes the blood in.
Let me
Yeah.
stop you there. You said a lack of circulation can cause that.
Right.
Was there anything else about Mercedes that led you to believe that her blood wasn't circulating?
In the initial moment when you're working on the patient, you're not noticing every condition of the patient. You're concentrating on trying to get them breathing and get the pulse back. However, notice her skin was already ashen,
Object to the narrative, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You said her skin was ashy. Why is that relevant to you in your assessment?
Pallor and ashiness is a sign of poor blood perfusion. So when there's a pulse is lost, the patient's skin color changes because of the lack of blood perfusion.
Okay. How does the appearance of blood change?
Depending on the time that they've been pulseless, the blood will darken because of the lack of oxygen.
Okay, so the blood will darken. Did you?
Ask your next question.
Okay, I'm so sorry, Judge. How did Mercedes' blood appear that day?
So after they were failing to get proper IV access, we actually got access with an IO, which is an intraosseous. So it's a needle we push into the bone of the below the knee, which is similar. Not the best, but it's similar to start trying to get fluids, medications. We didn't get any real blood return there. I finally got IV access on the side of her neck, and the blood return was dark. It was very dark.
It was very dark. And what did that tell you?
It's unoxygenated blood.
It's not oxygenated blood.
Correct.
And for us lay people, what does that mean?
So bright red blood is going to be in the arteries. That's going to be your oxygenated blood coming from the heart, going to the body. When it goes back in the veins, whenever you got a cut on your finger or anything, it's a little darker than oxygenated blood, but it's still red. The darker it is, the less oxygen is in it.
Okay. So does that have something to do with her heart function?
Right. If there hadn't been any circulation going, that means that none of the blood is passing through the lungs to pick up oxygen. So the body is using up whatever oxygen is there, and it's depleting it, so the blood is going to get darker.
Okay. You said you had worked at Northeast Baptist Hospital. How far? I'm sorry. You worked at Northeast Baptist.
Correct.
Right. How far away is that from where Texas Vista was?
At the time I lived about probably 10 minutes or 7-8 minutes a little northeast of even Northeast Baptist, and it would take me about anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes to get to work.
Okay. Were there other hospitals in the area?
You have Northeast Methodist, you have Northeast Baptist. I'm trying to think. On the way there's also several urgent cares, and they might not be open, but you have the standalone emergency rooms all the way through.
Okay. Ready to approach?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you what has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 3. What is this?
It's Mercedes Lozoya.
It's Mercedes. Is it a photo?
Correct.
Okay. Is this the little girl that you saw that day?
Correct.
Okay.
Was that a fair and accurate depiction?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would offer into evidence State's Exhibit number 3.
No objection, Your Honor. All right, State's Exhibit 3 is admitted without objection.
Okay. At this time, I would also offer State's Exhibit number 2, which was his report.
One and two.
Just
Number 2.
No objection, Your Honor.
State's Exhibit number 2 is admitted without objection.
Yeah, yes. So at this time, your report is in evidence. Can you
on 2/8/22 at 112, the child was brought in by mother at 1904. I took the child from the mother's hands, and that was my mistake. My memory was of the situation. It didn't happen so fast. I actually took it from my triage nurse's hands.
Okay.
And I placed her in the room 12 directly behind them where they had come in. Child was pulseless. CPR begun immediately. Several rounds of high-quality CPR and BVM-assisted ventilations were given. Patient never regained...
Excuse me, if you can slow down.
I apologize. I placed her in room 12 directly behind them. Child was pulseless. CPR begun immediately. Several rounds of high-quality CPR and BVM-assisted ventilations were given. Patient never regained ROSC, which is return of spontaneous circulation when we get a pulse back. And the code was called, meaning time of death was called. MD Dr. Newton called time of death at 19:18, 7:18. Child was noticed to have generalized bruising over body, posteriorly and anteriorly, along with scratches, missing areas of hair on head, wounds to her feet, and toenails missing on 2 toes of the left foot. Child had food still in her mouth on arrival. Per mom's statement, she had been feeding the child when she passed out and hit her head on a lamp. Mom stated she propped up child and continued trying to feed her. SAPD was called during CPR due to appearance of the patient's body. CPS also involved. Investigations being conducted by SAPD and CPS. Postmortem completed. ME en route for child's body.
Now, on the next page, the ED triage assessment. Can you please read what the ED triage note says?
Mother yelling for help in ER. Child taken straight into room. No pulse. CPR started. Child had chunks of food in mouth, and generalized bruising was noticed on patient's body. Bruising in different stages of healing. Noticed several wounds to child's feet with toenails missing from 2 toes on left foot.
There's a note that says that bruising was in various stages of healing.
Correct.
What does that indicate?
That the bruises were were caused at different days, weeks, maybe. I mean.
Did you observe, if you remember, did you observe any injuries that looked like they had just occurred?
There were newer bruises on her. I don't recall exactly where, but there were some that were darker than others.
Are you able to determine timeline of bruises?
Not exact timeline, but
Object to this, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Statement.
Overruled. You can answer the question, but just answer the question that's asked of you.
correct. You cannot exactly determine when, but you can differentiate between newer and older bruises.
Okay. And newer could be within the last week.
Day, a week, yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what rhabdomyolysis is?
Yes, that's I do.
What is that?
It's when muscle in the body starts to break down. For there can be several reasons. It breaks down and it can cause myoglobin, which is what muscles are made of. It can go to the kidneys and cause kidney failure, and it can increase your lactic acid in your blood, making your blood more acidic. It can cause nausea, vomiting, lethargy, malaise, and up to death.
Okay. So it can cause fatigue.
Correct.
It can cause nausea.
Correct.
And is malaise just another way to say fatigue?
Correct.
Okay. And is that something that will immediately lead to a coma, or is it something that takes time?
It's progressive. If it goes untreated, it's progressive.
I mean, it takes a few days or longer.
It can, depending on the damage to the muscle.
Okay.
How much is there?
And you said Mercedes had bruises all over her body.
Correct.
Is trauma like that something that can cause rhabdomyolysis in her?
Correct.
Objection, Your Honor, to the qualification of the witness to make the statement of what causes it.
All right, do you want to lay the foundation?
What is trauma? When you say trauma can cause it, what do you mean?
Trauma is any injury to the body from an outside force.
Okay. And had you seen, is rhabdomyolysis something that you have been seen diagnosed while you're in the ER?
Many times, and I even had it mildly myself at one point.
Okay. And so you've seen cases where you knew that trauma.
Objection to the meeting, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Have you seen cases of rhabdomyolysis where trauma was a contributing factor?
Many times.
What else can be a factor for rhabdomyolysis?
I mean, what else can cause it?
Yes.
Extreme amounts of exercise without proper hydration, dehydration, infection, metabolic issues, somebody with defective liver.
And if rhabdomyolysis is left untreated, what organs of the body does it hurt?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
That'll be overruled. You can answer the
It's
question.
not established that he has the expertise to answer that, Your Honor.
That'll be overruled. You can answer the question.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
What happens to the body if rhabdomyolysis is not treated?
So the release of the breakdown of muscle, the myoglobin, can affect the kidneys. That's what they call it, tea-colored urine. Your urine gets very dark, decreasing urine production. It can cause lactic acid release into the blood, making the blood more acidic. And then all the symptoms we already mentioned. And eventually it can cause the heart to be unable to contract properly. Reduces there. The high level of acidity can cause multiple organ failure.
Okay. Would you say that someone that has rhabdomyolysis left untreated may have a substantial risk of death?
Objection, Your Honor. Down to witness's expertise.
That'll be overruled.
Correct.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, I'm gonna try this again. May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Okay, hopefully this is better.
I've labeled this State's Exhibit number 4. This is a new map.
Okay.
Does this show where Southwest General would be?
Yes, it's going to be down to the south.
Okay, can you mark that with an X for me?
Approximately. Sorry. It's going to be approximately here in this area.
Okay. And I guess go ahead and circle it for me. Okay. Now, what other hospitals did you say were in
Yes,
the?
you've answered, Your Honor.
Overruled.
What other hospitals did you say were in the area from Northeast Baptist to Southwest General?
You have Northeast Baptist a little further.
And this map indicates Northeast Baptist.
Correct.
Is that a correct location?
Correct.
Okay.
A little further east, you have Northeast Methodist.
Can you mark maybe with?
It's in generally near the Live Oak area around there.
Okay, you got a circle. Can you put maybe a line through it? And that's Northeast Methodist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If you keep going further down, SAMC, the military medical hospital, is there.
Okay.
That's another one that they would not refuse a patient.
Okay.
Actually, near Northeast, there's a standalone emergency room that
Okay.
I actually did part-time there.
Can you put a circle there?
Around
Okay.
there. And I'm trying to think. You're also passing by the medical center,
Okay.
which has countless hospitals.
Can you maybe just do a square around where the medical center would be?
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. What about on the south side? Is there anything else? Any other medical center or hospitals you could think of on the south side?
South Side, Mission Trail
Okay.
Hospital, which is here by Brook City Base.
Okay.
And there's also in the vicinity, there's two Baptist standalone hospitals, mini
Okay.
hospitals as well.
Okay.
I don't remember the approximation of those.
That's okay. And it was your testimony that there was there are urgent care centers.
Urgent at that time of the night, maybe not, but definitely there's San Antonio's opened up a ton of small standalone ERs.
Okay. And you brought up a good point. What time of night was it?
I believe it was 7. Yes. Yeah, it was 7 p.m.
Okay. And this map, is this a true and accurate depiction of San Antonio?
Correct.
No objection,
Your Honor, Your Honor, I would offer State's Exhibit number 4.
no objection, Your Honor.
State's Exhibit 4 is admitted.
Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes.
Okay, so just to review, so this circle with an X is Southwest General,
Approximately, yeah.
or Texas Vista, right? This
Mhm.
general area. And then we have, like you say, Fort Sam, you have the medical center over here, you have Northeast Baptist, you have Northeast Methodist, or no, this was Northeast Methodist. Which one was this?
It was a standalone emergency room.
Okay, it was just a standalone ER.
Mhm.
So, is it a fair assessment to say that there are more hospitals in the northeast area than there are on the south side?
Correct.
And based on the condition of this child, how urgent did she need medical care?
She needed to go to the nearest facility.
Based on your observations of the child, do you have an opinion whether she was had trauma on her body?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay. How much?
Literally from head to toe, there was trauma, front and back.
Did you check her mouth
I-
or her facial area as part of your exam?
Right. Initially to remove the food that was still in her mouth, and then after the fact, during assessing the body,
Did you see anything in her mouth area, if you remember?
in her mouth area, I don't remember exactly, but there was bruising in the general area.
Was there bruising on her face?
I believe so.
Okay. Did you notice anything about her hair?
She had an area of her head that was missing hair. It looked like it was missing.
Okay. Did you ever speak to the mother, Katrina Mendoza?
I did not.
Okay. Did you stay with Mercedes?
I did.
Okay. What happened after Mercedes was declared deceased?
Afterwards, we had called SAPD and CPS, who were on scene, and the investigator for CPS was there, and he needed to take pictures for investigation. So it was my patient, and as a charge nurse, I was in there, and I was helping turn the body. I was turning the body so they could take the appropriate pictures. and then again for SAPD's investigator.
Did she have bruises? You said you turned her over. Did she have bruises on her backside?
All the way down, yes.
All the way down. Were they patchy, like one bruise and then another one? How continuous was the bruising?
They were all pretty approximated, different conditions of healing.
What would you refer to it as widespread?
Correct.
It covered her.
Right.
I'll pass the witness.
Defense.
Good morning, sir. My name is Teresa Conley.
Good morning.
Thank you, sir. Did you know Mercedes had asthma? Was there anything about that in the admitting concept?
No,
Didn't know anything about it.
did not.
You were first alerted to this, as I understand, by the sound of the mother yelling, "Save my baby."
The mother was yelling, and my triage nurse was yelling.
She was yelling too, the nurse?
Right, that she had a child that wasn't breathing.
I'm sorry, what?
That she had a child that wasn't breathing, to let us know what she was
That was
bringing.
her first response, that the child was not breathing. Is that correct?
Yes, along those lines, yes.
When you touched the child, was she breathing?
Initially when I grabbed her, I wasn't assessing. I was taking her to the room so we could lay her down and start working and make that assessment.
In your report, you stated that she was cold.
Right.
What did that indicate to you?
That initially it just indicates that she's cold, but there was no way for me to know why until we started the assessment.
Now, you said that, as I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, that you tried to take blood or put an IV in the child. Is that correct?
Correct.
And as I understand it, you said that the blood that you took out was very dark.
Correct.
And where were you able to take that blood from? What part of Mercedes' body?
We finally got access on the right side of her neck.
Right side of the neck? There was some comment in here about you had to go to her shin.
Right. That was another attempt to gain access. That's intraosseous access. It's a drill we put into the bone.
Actually, a drill. And this was for the IV, wasn't it?
Right. Especially with children, it's something we use commonly.
Was she given any anesthesia before you drilled into her leg?
No,
Why not?
because it's the type of emergency situation it is. It's not required.
Because she wasn't breathing, right?
It's because of we were doing CPR.
But she wasn't breathing.
Correct.
If she had been alive, would you have given her an anesthesia before you put a drill on her leg?
Not necessarily.
Object to relevance.
Not necessarily. There are situations, especially when there's respiratory issues, that by protocol we can start an intraosseous on a child.
What does that mean? I'm sorry.
Intraosseous into the bone, the drill into the bone. That because of the situation and why they're coming in, we can start it, and we don't generally use anesthesia when we start them. But the majority of the time when we start them, the patient is not awake.
Thank you. My next notes say different stages of healing. Is that in regard to all the bruises?
Correct.
You have any idea, can you estimate at all how old the oldest bruise might have been?
There's no way to tell exactly when or when it could have happened, but you can differentiate between older and newer by their color.
Were there black and blue traces, or yellow traces, or red? Remember any
All
of
of
that?
all of the above.
All of the above. Now, you said that you examined her various eyes, nose, whatnot. Did you notice anything particular about her eyes? Did you open them and take a look?
Unresponsive. They were. I'm sorry, not unresponsive. Yes, unresponsive to light.
Did they have any red specks in them?
Not that I recall. I don't
Look
recall.
for that?
If it's one of those things that's obvious when you look, but
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
it's one of those things that if you see, you see it. When we open the eyes, we're looking for the responses of the pupil.
weren't looking to see if the eye itself manifested anything, just whether it was.
Not necessarily, not in that moment, no.
Now, there was food in her mouth, and you said, if I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, that you had to pull it out to open her airways, is that right?
Correct.
Would that have made a difference for an asthmatic to have blocked airways?
If she was having an asthma attack, definitely would make it harder for them to try to take in air.
But you have no information that she was having an asthma attack, do you?
Right.
And the problem with an asthma attack is that the blood doesn't get oxygen, is that correct?
That can happen, correct. The airways close down and they can't take air in.
Did you wonder why a mother was feeding a 5-year-old child?
Of course, we try to, I mean, it's something that was stated and thought about, but I didn't think about that deeply. It was other things we were doing.
Did anybody ask her why she was feeding a 5-year-old child?
Speculation.
Overruled.
That I recall, no, not that I heard or that I recall.
You mentioned with rhabdomyolysis that you actually had it yourself.
A mild form case of
You
it.
lived.
Right.
Good.
I appreciate that.
When you had CPS in the room, do you recall any of the conversation?
With the CPS,
Object calls for hearsay.
Overruled. Just answer the question, not what anybody said.
I did.
Okay. Did they, as a result of your conversation with CPS, did you understand that they were familiar with this case?
Object to hearsay.
They didn't ask for hearsay.
All right, so everyone, stop talking over each other. Everyone make your legal objection and I'll make a ruling. And your objection is hearsay?
It calls for hearsay, Your Honor.
All right, and what is your response, counsel?
All right, I didn't ask for hearsay. I said as a result of the conversation, what did he observe?
You may answer that question.
Can you be more specific? What did I observe as far?
Any indication that they had been familiar with the case?
After the fact, after
Object to.
All right, so counsel, re-ask your question.
As a result of your conversation with CPS, do you recall that they indicated a familiarity with Mercedes' case?
not initially,
But at some point?
correct.
Thank you. Anybody else? No further questions. Ask the witness.
One final question, if you can answer it. How quickly, once the heart stops circulating, how quickly does it take for the blood to become dark like that? What kind of time frame?
It's not easy to say, but it can take a little bit of time because there's still going to be oxygen in the blood for
Your Honor, I'm going to object because of speculation on
Sustained.
Mr. Cervantes' part.
Is there a minimum time? Not necessarily in how far it can possibly go, but a minimum. Is it gonna be more than 5 minutes?
more than 5 minutes, correct.
Is it gonna be more than 10 minutes?
Most likely.
Okay. No further questions.
Mr. Cervantes, the cause of death that you have on your records here indicates cardiac arrest. Is that correct?
That's not, we're not determining cause of death. We're determining her state when she comes in,
Or, I'm sorry.
her condition when she comes in.
Cardiac arrest is on there. What is the title of the place where cardiac arrest is written on that report?
What page are we on?
I don't know, you have it. Thank you.
Unable to respond reason, is that what we're talking about? So there's a part here where during the triage where it's asking questions, different kinds of questions, general questions we ask all the patients, and when we say that they're unable to respond, we have to ask why. We have to state why. And
The answer was?
cardiac arrest.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cervantes. No other questions, Your Honor. Yes, the witness.
Just one clarification question. If someone came in with a head trauma, say a subdural hematoma, and then they stopped having a pulse, but before you knew it was a hematoma, is it safe that you would probably put cardiac arrest?
Correct.
Okay. So it just means the heart's not pumping.
It means the heart stopped.
Okay. It's not a cause of death.
Right.
No further questions.
But it could be.
What's that?
Cardiac
Object to
arrest
speculation,
could be.
Your Honor.
That objection will be overruled. You can remain seated when you ask your question. Ask your question, and if you can answer it, answer it.
Cardiac arrest can be and determine, and there could be but you have to. It's the ME's job to determine what caused the cardiac arrest.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mhm.
More